All right. Welcome to Let's Talk Locking. I believe this is episode 11. I'm Little
We're at
B,
episode.
and this is Kai Star. This is our first stream that we are doing live on Twitch and YouTube, and simultaneously also on IG Live, Instagram Live, on the Let's Talk Locking Instagram account. So we're trying to move away from our personal accounts to promote it all here. Anything that you guys can do to help promote, follow, like, share would be great for us. This is again our our humble beginnings. We felt that the first iteration of like what 9 episodes was going really well, and we're like, let's take it to the next step. And we're the kind of people that aren't really like ready to take it to the next step as best as we would like, but we're gonna do it. We're doing it. Slow process, but we're here.
We spend a lot of time just trying to tackle all the tech issues that we normally don't have to deal with. So this is a new venture for us in that regard, right?
Yeah.
1 second. Well, feels weird having the blur behind me, so we'll remove that. Um, but
Oh,
oh
I see what we did. I set up your restream to also post it on YouTube. So it's going
yes,
to be
we
saved
did
on
do that.
YouTube. Yeah. So
Yep.
that's how we'll have it.
Hey,
So
YouTube.
what's crazy is that the YouTube is actually streaming both of these live. So
Hey.
this is cool. Um nice. David, if you could leave a comment on the Twitch and YouTube just so I have visibility that these things are working correctly, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Sick. Okay, perfect. Oh, this is great. This is
It's so
great.
much it's so much nicer than our really
Oh,
janky Instagram live version, right?
I think so. Wait, no visibility on Twitch? I see it working for me. Shows up on
So when you
YouTube.
say when you say no visibility, what does that mean?
He's probably hopping between like 3 different things right now, checking for us.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I just have to pause it so I'm not eating up all my bandwidth.
Right, Epic. How you guys doing? Sorry for all the techno babble and garbage that you guys are probably listening to right now.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Um, it's a blank screen for David. It is working for me
On Twitch.
on Twitch. I do see it. Oh, it shows for me now. Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you, David. I'm hoping that was just the user thing. Okay. Okay, cool. So I think we're all set on all 3 of our platforms. Little things that we can figure out, like I know I need better lighting and background or something. Um, but this is nice because I
Record.
get to, yeah. See, you have like nice records. You can just see my like the way I live.
It's reality, right?
It's true. Um, okay, so sorry, you're asking me how my week has been.
Yeah.
Um, Strictly on the dance front, it's actually been a little exhausting. Um,
Understandable. Understandable.
yeah, and it's not because anything's gone wrong. Um, I guess to give context, just because I don't want it to just be something we talk about and not name here.
Hmm.
Hurricane dropped an Instagram post a couple of days ago, 5-ish days ago,
Hmm.
and bottom line of it is that we want to start referring to the dance style locking as what the originator called it, Campbellocking, and it's in our way, it's kind of like righting a wrong that's been happening for a long time. And I won't say anything wrong, but it's just we're trying to make things right.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's more in regard, and from my stance, more in regard to paying respects to Don.
Hmm.
And Yeah, I think that would be like the bottom line. Of course, it's going to be very nuanced because we've been calling it locking for what, close to 40 years now. Oh, I
Yep.
can't math. Yeah, like
It
40-ish
was
years, right?
yeah.
Um, globally, internationally, like and everywhere that we see this dance style or genre, as Supa likes to call it, we've always referred to it as locking. And no one knew any better. It's not like anyone was doing anything wrong. So now we want to just kind of move forward in a better way and refer to it as Campbellocking when we can. Again, there's a lot of questions and nuances coming out from that.
Well, I guess does that mean, for instance, do should we change our name to Let's Talk Campbellocking? And so those are those things that end up and these are the sorts of conversations that will inevitably end up happening. Um I am personally of the view that we do our best to make the switch. But it shouldn't be compulsory to people, in my opinion. Like, if you shouldn't feel forced or you shouldn't feel pressured to always use the term Campbellocking. We do it from a place of love. We do it from a place of understanding, and you are going to, and we should, you know, again, try our best to acknowledge the fact that there is a precedent for the name there before the commercial name got switched to locking.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like, I don't think it's this thing where we should all feel like, oh, all of us, like, we should feel some sort of like obligation or pressure to do it. Um, I don't know. What do you think?
So I it's funny because I'm going to use a gaming example, and I don't even play this game. But when I say, "Do
Mhm.
you want to play League?" You know I mean League of Legends.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like that, where like people have been using the shorthand for a long time,
Hmm.
and the shorthand of it comes with the eraser, the black eraser that like Alan mentions.
Hmm.
And again, I want to be able to say that can be a separate thing because I think that can be its own huge topic revolving around this, right? So I don't want to get like super into that, but it's also like as we've been using the shorthand version of calling it locking,
Hmm.
it removes the educational part and knowledge and history of it is actually referred to as Campbell locking.
Hmm.
So I'm thinking of it more like that, where like maybe people didn't know the name League of Legends, so they just call it League for forever, you know? Like it's kind of like
Hmm.
that. I wish I'd picked a game I was more actually familiar with, but that's the one I'm going with because that's what everyone's familiar with.
Makes sense.
Um, right? So I think that as long as we start to help people be aware that we've been using the shorthand and that we want to help make sure, like, hey, we're calling it locking, but you know, like my community knows, my event knows this is Campbell locking.
Hmm.
And we are also on the side of like they are not separate. Like there isn't a locking style and a Campbell locking style, and those were separate. It is always and always will be all of it under the same thing is all Campbell locking. Correct?
So one person did bring up something to me, which, in my opinion, could potentially be tricky, and that is there are still a lot of our elders that refer to Campbell lock and locking as separate things.
Mm.
Um,
Pop
I am
locking
not.
is a something people are bringing up in the Twitch chat.
Oh yeah, and I don't really want to get into the meat and potatoes of that because I don't think it's my personal place to tell the elders what how to go about like the last 40 like 35 40 years of their contribution to stuff.
Yeah, no, it's the
But
same for me. Like I was just at Fools in
yeah,
Love, right? And
yeah,
some of the attendees there were even saying like, "Yo, he's doing rerun."
yeah.
I'm not gonna stop what I'm doing. Like, yo, that's called Campbell locking. You know, like I'm not gonna do that. Like that is a part of their history. You
Hmm.
know, my my sake in this is that we're going to be doing this moving forward. Like people who are locked into the way that it's always been called, like let's say, like I'm never going to correct people by calling it like if they call it the rerun dance.
Mhm.
It could be cool to be like, I'm actually a locker and it came from like Don Campbell and Soul Train. I could do all that. But this is more for like as we're throwing events, as we're organizing community, as we're having like sessions, as we're talking about each other, that we know and we're fully aware that everybody is a Campbell locker.
Mhm.
Moving forward, this is more important for the generations active now and moving forward. Looking backwards, I can't change history.
Nope.
And that's not what this is about. This is not about changing the past. This is about understanding what happened in our past. It's not even my
Mhm.
past. It's the past of it's the history of the style that I do.
Mhm.
And we are at a point now where a conjunction in its where it's now no longer in its infancy. It's ready to go to high school. We're gonna give it a new name, the name it was always born with.
Oh man. So wait, no, huh? I can't math either. Like if we think 1970, so that's yeah, that's like 45, 44 years?
Yeah,
69? Yeah, so I mean, that's a 45-year-old high schooler.
yeah.
Hey,
Riot saying
um
Europe doesn't see it that way though. Uh,
yeah, and
I don't know if I have thoughts on that. I just have a eh.
so I actually right while we're at it, like what when you say Europe doesn't see it that way, um I guess like let's talk about that. What exactly do you mean by that? And which is to say, like, I think I know what you mean by it, but just to actually have like a conversation piece and figure that out. David, witch elders, I'm not going down that road. I'm sorry. Like, I ain't trying to start no shit.
Also, when it
Um,
comes to elders, like I was saying, there's a lot of people outside of our dance and
mhm.
outside of the street dance culture that grew up knowing it as the rerun dance. Like that's the kind of stuff that impacted our OGs inside of our dance styles.
Yeah,
Like they heard it as the rerun dance from other people.
yeah.
They see it as two different styles.
Admittedly, for a long time, I had the same idea in my head, and I thought to to me for a long time before like it really kind of sank in, it was the idea of Campbellock being like Dot, right? Being more of a concentrated individual aspect of what he did and the root of all things, if that makes sense. And then the idea of locking was the community aspect that came afterwards. And so I think for a long time that sort of mindset, and wasn't necessarily just something from myself individually. There were conversations that I had with people that led me to that, I don't know, that train of thought at the moment. And then frankly, just talking to Brian and reading Alan's post and doing a lot of thinking about it, I'm like, why did I have that train of thought?
Mm,
So it's also just being able to kind of understand the collective history as well, and also the like understanding how people got to their conclusions. Um, but that's also why like I don't want to like, and especially like with the elders, I think it's a little bit more touchy of a conversation to speak with, just because like they have their own history over the last 40 some odd years of being involved.
yeah.
So, um, yeah, as far as the younger generation and as far as the people that care, like I said before, for me, I think it's imperative that we do our best to make the change whenever we can. And there are going to be moments where it becomes tricky to do that, or the shorthand ends up being more convenient, which can be a double-edged sword in and of itself, as Brian mentioned earlier.
Yeah. And I would mention it like this too, like when we're in middle school, high school, and you get like your history book, your math book, it's gone through several revisions to get to the version that you're at today. And after you graduate, there's several iterations after that for the next generation because things get improved upon. There are things that no longer relevant. Like these things happen. And I think we're at a point now where this is the revision of the textbook that we're kind of giving out right now. This is what happens when we actually come together and try to make decisions to change things for the better. Like we've learned, like Kaisar was saying, he had his own history and knowledge that led him to conclude for a while, for a long time, that things were kind of separate. The dance style, the person, and what became of it, like from the community. But now we're more understanding, like, it's actually all, if you trace down the family tree, the root starts from the same place. So we're trying to make sure that the things get to that root, they get back to Don. And I personally don't see anything wrong with that. I can understand if this challenges people's viewpoints because this means that you never want to give up your math book from high school. You never wanted to say like no, they never revised it. Like they did. They are. You have to be a little bit up to date if we can. If you're like 60 plus, I understand if you don't want to have a revised book, but we're in this place now to have that. Couple of questions that popped up. I see Avatar Ang saying non-dancers are still mistaking it as pop locking, popping, breakdancing, and I think so. It's always going to be different of us being very integrated into the street dance culture on a on our local levels and international levels because we have so much more information that we get from like being up to date with like watching competitions, watching who's teaching. We see all that. Non-dancers really don't. They will
Mhm.
see the terms breakdancing and they generally have an understanding of what it is. Good enough, I think, for the most part. Until it becomes a real topic of conversation, then people can have the option, do I want to be more educated on this subject? It's kind of like, and someone brought up, like, what is my thoughts on Ray Gun being called the number one breakdancer in the world right now? Uh, I don't have much thoughts on that right now because it goes down a very, very, very deep rabbit hole. But it's like, what would you do in her situation? I, I don't know. Um, yeah, I think it's really important to acknowledge that we are street dancers. We are integrated into the community, and there's a whole slew of people who are not. And that's okay. Can you be a person that they can ask about the dance styles that you do and that you know? Like maybe they don't know locking as anything. They just see it as something along the sides. Like I know to non-dancers, like locking, popping, house, hip hop looks the same. Like people won't even know the music's different. Like it's really that different for normal non-dancers. I
You
guess
were
we
you
have.
were an inch away from calling them normies.
I was because that's what we say when we're at a club. I won't lie. I'm not trying to hate. It's just faster to
But
say it.
but see, I think that's the trick about the anecdotization of the name or the abbreviation of the names. Um, David has a good point here. Was my thing is what is the counter argument to not wanting to mention it if you're a teacher? I don't mean in a conversational sense, but from a community sense or a teaching sense, what's the counter? And quite frankly, there is no argument against it. Um, like when we shorten things or when we use terms, they should be grounded in reality, and the reality for locking or Campbell locking, whichever term you do end up using on the main, is that Campbell locking is the term. It's what we should be using as much as possible. If we anecdote, like if we shorten it, then there should be reasons for it, and maybe it's for community reasons, maybe it's for sensitivity reasons, maybe it's for different things. But Um, I don't want to sit here and be the police, right? Like I don't think it helps for us to bash people over the head for not using the term. It should be something that we do out of respect and out of love for Don. Um, but
And I think it can be as simple as that,
yeah,
explaining it that way. You know, like why if someone's coming to you and they're like, "Why are you calling it Campbellocking?" Like, okay, I'm paying my respects. I'm
yeah.
doing my due diligence.
David, I'm not gonna like go outing people, and I'm not gonna like. I mean, and most of the, come on, most of these people already like saying stuff online about it anyway, so I'm not we're I don't think that's helpful because in reality like we should like if we're going to be doing something positive, let's not call out the elders too. Let them deal with their own with their own thoughts.
You can get to some of the comments here too. Avatar Ang, just to solidify, is it appropriate to begin saying in classes the Campbell lock, aka locking, and to name classes locking slash the Campbell lock as we transition it back to the original nomenclature?
Nomenclature.
Nomenclature. And Riot, I think we forget that even though we revere and love the OGs, there's some human shit between the OGs that was never resolved. Because of that, we stand at a crossroad with no direction. Exactly.
Yes.
And that's why I
And
think our generation is saying, this is our direction. Let's see what fucking happens. Because we've never done that. We've never done that. All we did was take the things that they kind of gave us and like, oh, you kind of had competitions. Let's just keep kind of doing that. Let's not change it up much. Like, no, we're doing it our way now. And I think to Avatar Ang's question about where is it appropriate to call it, you know, Campbell locking slash locking when it comes to like your classes, I think that really depends on your studio, your students, like things like that. Like
mhm.
how, and this is something I would want to ask someone who's like interested in locking but not really knee deep in it yet, right? Like if we call it Campbell locking, does that confuse you? Because I don't know. I don't want to just assume like you should understand if I call it Campbell locking, and not like oh you should understand the history, but more like locking's in the name. Do you get it? I don't know. Is it because I mean you see like Summer Dance Forever or like Just Debut, you see all the names of the styles, and now one of them is going to be way longer than the others. Is that weird? I think no, because lockers want to stand out anyway. So it's all good for us. But I will say like for myself, I'm going to try to refer it as Campbell locking as much as I can, whether on a smaller scale conversation or in big things like this or other events, because I've been using the term locking for a long time. Just locking. I never referred to myself as a Campbell locker. I kind of because I assumed it was kind of the same thing anyway, and I didn't realize I was potentially doing damage in the way that you know Hurricane was a little bit phrasing in his post, and that's real because that means in like the almost 20 years I've been doing this, th- people would have to ask about who made it as opposed to like it's kind of embedded in the name and it makes it easier to ask like why is it called that, where you have popping and then Campbell locking, like why is it, and I could explain the difference, right? I think for a long time because we had like popping and locking like together, it just fits so nicely with each other. What would the popping version of this be?
I'm not going there. Can you imagine how messy that conversation would be too, considering all like the friction between the Bay and Fresno when it comes to that?
Hey, I've always said that even though it was messy, the drama and the beef at this having it back then makes for a better today because a lot more conversations, whether they were good or bad, things happened. Conversations were had. Whereas for us, it was a lot of like, let's not say that, let's not do that, because it'll upset somebody.
Yes, Al, very much so. Would an example be like whacking with an H and whacking with a double A and punking? Yes, very much so.
I don't know
And
why that's the first time we're hearing that example, but yes,
but
100%.
that's a great example. But it also I mean, like that's still the thing though, is that you still see whacking with a double A used across the world because that was something that Tyrone preached. Now, does that necessarily, do the things that we now know about whacking with an H and punking disqualify the double A? I think we should move away from using double A because it refers to a very specific group. But that also comes back to the whole idea of Campbell locking and logging. Like we are here trying to use the quote unquote correct terminology. I don't want to necessarily say correct in the sense that like we're fixing um
Yeah.
quote unquote bad terminology because it's not necessarily, I don't necessarily think it's bad because if it gets you involved and if you learn something from it, sweet. We are here to talk about the fact that okay, let's pay homage to like the source.
Yeah.
Let
And I know
us
that Whackers also, like, I've seen it within their posts of like sessions and events. Like they'll have like the double A or like an asterisk or a cross out, but it's still there so that you can kind of see changes happening, whether you
Mhm.
understand why or not, right? Like, and that's a good example of like trying to like pull in and pay respect and do your due diligence and also put it out there a little bit of like, hey, something's happening here, right? We have the A crossed out or shown that it's crossed out. So there's something like that we can do with Campbell locking.
Mhm. Uh, right saying nah, there's a major difference. Would love to hear what you think about that, dude. Do.
Yeah, I think
Any cross?
maybe the lore for the
Yeah.
differences will be incredibly different, but I think how we go about the change can be viewed as very similar.
Yes. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah,
That
it's more
that
how
should
I'm
that.
seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know
Eh,
that okay, so I don't even know the full story of stuff like that because I'm scared of it. But I also do feel like when how can I put this? For as long as a lot of people have been using locking, it wasn't to try to take away or make a name for yourself by taking
mm,
it away from the Campbell locking experience or person or anything about that. It wasn't trying to do that. From what I understand of like the double A and whacking and the H, there's a little bit of that, right? It's about like making a name for yourself and saying it is this. Punking is different. It is this kind of stuff. And that's as far as I know because that's as much as my body will allow.
I am not going to get into this. I think
Yeah,
there are better. I think there are better people who are more um who are better suited to talk about the specifics of whacking and punking.
100%. That's
Um,
why I'm just giving my
yeah.
explanation of my dumb dumb brain of how it goes about learning history because there's only so much that I know that I can take in. Basically, there are people who believe their contributions are just as important as Don. Mm. I haven't come across it yet of because this is just happening in the
Yeah.
last 5 days of like let's make a movement that we're calling Campbellocking. I haven't really seen yet someone being like that takes away from me if you do that. I'm not saying
I
that's not true. I'm just saying that I haven't seen it yet.
So when it comes to the elders, I don't necessarily think that anyone thinks that their contributions are outright like on the same level of Dot, right? Like I don't think like because everyone that I've spoke to has always given credit to Don for being the creator and being the spark for everything. And everyone that I've personally talked to has mentioned that no, like we just added some stuff along the way and we are
Yeah.
part of that. We are part of that group. So um
I'm
I
also
know
thinking
it,
now too. Oh, god, sorry.
no, and I think it's easy to kind of feel that from a lot of people that they feel that they all feel that their contributions equal dons in like seeing stuff online or listening to people um like talk in forums. So then what's the problem with calling it Campbellocking? Um,
I
Pride.
personally don't see a problem because,
That there
yeah, I just don't. I was thinking,
yeah,
like, let's say I'm not gonna name anybody because I can't really actually think of anybody. But if someone came to me and says like, "Hey, that takes away from my history and my contributions," I would say, "So what can I do to help make sure that you feel acknowledged and you that you are acknowledged, and that your
yeah,
history is within this too?" Like I feel like I've been paying so much respect to the OGs up to a certain point of like the family tree, and it just never fully branched into Dawn, right? So now I'm trying to like make sure that I'm tracing everything back to the source, but it doesn't mean he was the end all be all because other people did have contributions. How can I help pay that forward? And I think I've already been doing that prior to us making this big change. But we don't see other OGs coming forward and saying,
yeah.
"Okay, let's do it."
And why do some OGs feel this way? I think a lot of that is just force of habit. Frankly, like
Mm.
I think there's just the pushback of the terminology because it's like, oh well, you know, like we've been doing this for the last however many years, and when you're that old, like I don't think there is like you do something for so long, and I think there's just an automatic pushback to changing something that you've done for so long. I don't necessarily think that there's um that for most of them, right? I don't think that there is maliciousness if there is a little bit of pushback just because they see it as something that they've done and continued for so long. I'm not that generation. I can't speak for it, right?
Yeah,
But you know, it's like again, like that's just one of those things, and that's one of those hurdles that again we have to offer in saying that look, we understand that you've used this terminology. We understand that, you know, things have progressed for the last however many years with this terminology. We are making the conscious decision to change it back to at least change the way that we use the nomenclature as Campbellocking and the Campbellock because we want to pay tribute to Don. We want to offer this thing. If they don't want to change it, then it's something that again, like I don't think we should be trying to force people into changing the name because again, like you can like we could be blue in the face and it just and if it drives more of a divide, then I don't think it's productive. We can
yeah,
only focus on, I think it's focusing on the things that we can do to make things a positive community as opposed to trying to like I don't know, like it's still like the idea of making people use it doesn't sit right with me. And I understand the idea that look, we should do our best to use the term the Campbellocking, but I'm not going to sit here and try to force people into changing their beliefs, even if I don't agree with it.
yeah. And like I was saying too, I think this is more about paving a way for the future as much or less it is about changing the past and the way that like our elders viewed things. I would like to say they threw us the football and now we're running with it, right? And now it is ours in our generation. And of course, it's always Hurricane who's going to be the one to be like, "I run first." And then we're like, "Okay, we understand and we will help. I got you." I do. I really do. Um I would be interested to see if this change does challenge some teachers of maybe they were teaching it differently or like they saw it differently, thinking that there was a super separation between locking and Campbell locking because I think that's where it's actually going to affect people. And I would say like the reason I'm so up in arms about wanting this change on more of a global level is because again I went to and this is not like speaking negatively on anybody, right? But like at Handshake, 500 plus lockers. I don't think that Don Campbell was mentioned. And so I think that if people are being invited into this conversation, hear about this conversation, and they start to do things that maybe help acknowledge what this message is about, what this change is about, that these things will start to happen. That Don Campbell will be mentioned, even just as a we owe this dance to this person. Like everything that we have, everything that we get to build right now, because of that person, and then the people that he affected. It moves forward from there on the tree, and
I
that's just something that hasn't happened maybe at a lot of events.
Yeah, and I think in terms of like talking about um Campbell locking overseas, much less locking, you go to pretty much anywhere outside of the US and you'll find that there's only a certain subset of the population of dancers doing Campbellocking that have actually seen the group The Lockers.
Mm.
Like a lot of people just don't know who don't know who the Lockers are. They don't know Don. They don't know Greg. They don't know like they maybe see Scooby. They maybe see Alpha, and they go, "Oh, this is that generation." But when you talk about like actually watching Don in his prime in any in in any kind of context, they've never seen any of the footage. They have no idea. And so, being able to um being able to spark this, I think, is also really important to being able to provide context of hey, what is the dance that we do, and why is it there? And so I think like thinking about at of Brian being at Handshake and not one mention of Don, it's this is a great jumping point.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also again we can't bash people over the head because again you're also talking about people that don't speak English.
Yeah,
They have no method of like understanding, okay, why are we using the Campbell lock all of a sudden?
yeah,
What is the Campbell lock? And so that's the part of the education that also kind of needs to happen. And we can't stop ourselves and be like, well, you should know this, because even though while they should know it, we also know that the education of Campbell locking hasn't been great.
yeah,
So let's keep it, to me, I think we should keep it positive. I think we should do our best to be informative and educate when we can. Um and we kind of have to hold back that urge of like oh you're like oh you're a famous dancer, for instance, and you're like traveling all over the world and you're doing these things. You should be educating people about the culture of this more. There, like when you're at that level, definitely I think that there should be accountability there. But people on people beginning to learn the dance or who are trying to find their way in the dance, if they have no idea what Campbell locking is, then the impetus on us for us to be positive and for us to create an environment to feel welcome, and and for them to like feel like they should be able to learn.
yeah. And I would say, like, ask yourself, like, how can I help? Because everyone's in a different position here, right? So if I'm speaking strictly to people who are currently teachers or mentors or organizers of events, how now that you are included in this conversation and you understand the homework, like how do you want to go about using this? Like what will change for you? Like for myself, again, like I need to use it as much as I can, even in just like considering changing my Instagram handle, because I am so embedded in that. When I host sessions or I'm gonna host like a battle, even for Get Lifted, we call it the Campbellock experience because we kind of feel what we know we bring to the table, and it is about that experience. And it's not saying that it's something separate from locking. This is another educational place of like it's always been the same to us, and like Tasha's mentioned this too in her stories and just anywhere that she can be heard. She's been saying this for a long time that Campbell locking is the same as locking. It's all just it's been the same thing. It's come from the same seed. It's all the same thing. So again, how how will you use it? How does it affect you and the people around you? Because that's it's different for everybody. So I can never shame someone I don't know teaching somewhere else and they don't know about this conversation yet. I'm not gonna be like, hey, slap on the wrist kind of stuff. Like maybe they learn it from coming to talk to me or being in my class or whatever it is, you know.
Uh,
Trying to see how that could. Yes, they can just do it on Instagram Live. That's fine.
do you want to switch over to Instagram Live?
I
Because we
can
are on.
I can hear it from my end. I just letting you know, it's not a question of like, is this okay or not? It's more the logistic side of we are doing this on Discord, and I have it all nicely set up on here.
Yeah. So it's more of a technical thing. I think like way long ago we had you guys on the Discord as well. So it's definitely possible. Just be aware that it may kind of get a little funky and messy if we do it. So I um I would love to I would love to have that conversation with you guys. I'm just not sure if we can logistically
Oh,
do it. You know what I mean?
they can't. I just realized, yeah, they can't join your Instagram Live because you're doing it from the computer.
No, but if they join the Discord that
Yeah,
we are in
yes,
and
yeah, they can do that.
we get them timed.
Yes,
Yes. We can you send them the invite?
yeah.
Sweet. Cool. So, or Epic and Riot are saying, well, we'll send you the. I think Brian is in the process of trying to send you the invite either way. But you know, for all intents and purposes, right? Like at least I think it's tricky. Like the entire scene when we talk about the community as a whole, or not just community as a whole, but the dance style as a whole, like locking, Campbell locking, irrespective of what people want to call it, there are going to be sides who have opinions on both. Um, and while I am in agreement that we need to use the Campbell lock, you know, um, I'm also trying to be, I don't know, like realistic slash pragmatic in the sense that realistically people are people want to stay close to the chest with what they know, or what they're used to.
Actually,
Does
yeah,
that necess-
yeah.
does that
Uh,
necessarily what up?
I was gonna say, yeah, Riot and Epic. I would love to have you on. There's just a lot of logistical things. Can we get you on early next week so that we can actually set it up and do it with you guys properly? Because I would love to have you on. If we were doing our regular IG live stuff right now, it would be like quick, easy, hop in.
Yeah,
But I'm sending you guys the Discord.
yeah.
Sweet. Thank you for
I
being
can't. Yeah,
understanding.
yeah. I can't do it on my end because I have the Instagram live thing set up, and if I kind of scroll out of it, it messes up the aspect ratio, which you guys probably just saw. Uh,
Yeah,
so it gets a little tricky for me. Um,
this would be great for us because it'll be our first time hosting people while doing it this way. So I'd really love to see how this can work out for us. Thank you.
yeah.
Because honestly, the Hoodlockers, you are a group I would love to have on this. I also just want to catch up with you guys, like first and foremost, because it has been a long time. Um, I think I swore I invited you guys back to the Discord. Maybe I did it on Discord, but yeah, like
Uh,
a couple of months
right.
ago, we rehashed the Let's Talk Locking Discord that we were trying to set up in 2020, and we got it all the way set up, and we're trying to like get it active and stuff again. So there would be better push for advertising for that.
It's in my nature, right? No, but no, seriously, thank you guys. Man,
I will say too, like
that
you
would be
guys,
so cool to have you guys on right now.
yeah, I know. I will say though, because of Hurricane's post and especially the topic of like Black Erasure, you
Hmm.
guys are someone that I've thought about for like how do you guys see this? How is this affecting you? Are there parts that you agree or disagree with? Because like for me, I am just gonna full force as Hurricane takes the football and is running line back. I am just gonna defend as much as I can. I will do that very blindly. I would love to hear how you guys are receiving this stuff. Cause I also you like right, you were getting pissed off at the same shit I was this week. I know that.
Oh man. And I mean, like that's the thing, right? Is that there are going to be people with frankly really bad takes on it, like really toxic takes on the conversation. We saw a hint of that really hard over the last couple of days.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like those are those things is that you like we have to be able to also kind of like manage things in a way that people understand that hey like the shit talk is unacceptable. But we really kind of got to be on a positive level.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Uh yes. There's something going on with the Instagram live.
Did it drop?
I think I may
I
yeah,
still
I
see you.
think you still see it?
Yeah.
Huh, weird. Okay. Um cool. Yeah, it gave me like this weird automated behavior discount.
Oh, I saw it black out for a second. I think you're good now though.
Yeah, yeah.
I see. Okay,
Okay.
we're good.
Sorry. Um but yeah, it's just like you see all this frankly shitty conversation about and behavior from people who don't really understand. And I think that's where we have to sit and we have to be like, yo, this is a conversation and we are trying to make sure that you understand that this comes from a good place. And beyond that, what else can you do? I don't think it's possible to force people into changing if they don't want to change. But if we make people understand.
Yeah. Again, I'm thinking more on like community level than it is about one person kind of
Yeah.
stuff too, and because that's always rough. Um, and like, there are a lot of family nuances that I don't think we should ever actually be privy to, but because that's up to the family, you know,
Yeah.
like we have the football now, we are running with it. Where are you on the field? Or maybe you're just an observer at this point. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't. Um, and I'll say even before a lot of that stuff started coming up, it was already exhausting just kind of like feeling the impending change and questions because there have been things that like even the last couple of years that are showing separation of Campbellocking and locking. And now we're like trying to globally say even though we've been saying it in our classes that's all the same thing. Right? I believe like it was, someone asked, oh I think it was David that asked like, who's Daiso and like, what's his attachment to this and I will say
That's
just
all.
on the dance aspect that he was someone that like at least in the last like I don't know 5 6 years or something maybe longer they got really popular from his studying of Don's nuances, right? Like all the things that he did. So much, in fact, that I always call it out and think it's weird when someone does the kiss to no one. I think that's fucking weird. That's like that's habitual for you. That's weird, bro. But whatever. Oh,
So
but yeah, it's
Hussein,
someone.
I
I'll go.
agree 100%. It's about who's correct. Forget how people feel. On a personal level, hell yeah, hell yeah. But I think in terms of community outreach, and if we're trying to make long lasting change, um, I think there's a time for good cop. I think there's a time for bad cop, if that makes sense. And I think right now is the time for making sure that people understand that, hey, like this is supposed to be a positive movement. We're not trying to be on some like change your shit or get out kind of thing, because I think that that drives more of a wedge into the community, into more of the style than there has been over the last couple of years. And like my concern is not so much the people who are established. My concern is always going to be the people that are trying to find their way.
Yeah, the
Um,
people coming into this.
yeah, because they don't have that trauma that we do. They don't have the experiences, good and bad, of the people that have been involved for as long as we have, right? So we can certainly make the case like, hey, like if you don't want to make the change and you're going about it in a in a really toxic attitude, then fuck the fuck off. But that doesn't actually do anything positive for the people who are still trying to find their way.
Oh, it did end. Yours did
It
end.
did end. God damn it. Okay.
I think you just have to redo it, and
Yeah.
that should be okay.
Where am I? Let us see here.
The IG live cut out. We are going to be bringing it back in just a second, so we'll hold conversation till then.
It
This
says
is one of the reasons that we were trying to move off of IG live because it's not very consistent for how long we can do it. It hasn't been great for if we're going to do video editing or sound check or anything like that. It's just whatever we have on our phones. I know that we could have bought equipment for our phones, but I think it is better that we moved on to the other platforms such as YouTube and Twitch.
says check my encoder setting. There's some weird stuff going on with Scram. So
Mm,
apologies everybody.
all good.
Trying to get this all.
Let you do your thing. Um, Again, this kind of also brings me to the point just on a logistical for our podcast. Ideally, it would be great to move off of. Excuse me. It'd be great to move off Instagram altogether because it'd be nice if everyone got an actual notification from Twitch or YouTube that we are starting the live, as opposed to just maybe we're getting lucky with Instagram. So it's one of the things I would like to help ask for support and help on, is to help bring people to the Discord, help bring people to the Twitch and YouTube. And maybe this will be a short story that I'll put up finally on something.
Okay, we're back
Okay.
up. I don't know if.
Let me make sure I can see it first.
Okay. I see Sam
Yes.
C is joined.
Yes, it
Duh-duh-duh.
is.
Cool.
Cool.
Awesome. Sorry guys.
Yep.
Man, I want to have Riot and Epic back in.
Yeah. Um.
Because and for what it's worth, like all these questions, they're really valid. All these points, they're very valid. Um, like it's conversations. It is figuring out kind of a different paradigm within the dance, that we didn't really have before. Um, so that's one of those things where it's like, okay, we're trying to figure things out so that we can actually have a clear vision of where we're going. Right. See you back in here, bro. Sorry for the technical difficulties. This Instagram stuff. What up, Hussein? Again, just to kind of recap, Hussein, 100%, like, it ain't about, people's feelings. It should be about the correct thing. But again, thinking about, not necessarily the people who are established within the dances, like battle winners or judges or all these people who are there as people who are already participating. Because in reality, if they wanted to correct their behavior, they would have done it years ago. But I think it's more about, again, like the new people, the people who are coming into stuff. And so keeping it as positive and forward thinking as possible, I think is probably, in my opinion, the best way to go. Again, everyone will have different opinions on the general direction, but um, yeah, I think I think that's where it is though, is that being able to keep things um sensible in that regard, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And like heads up, like I know we just informally but formally invited the Hoodlockers to join us next week. But we'll also be having Tosh and Hurricane on with us next week as guests to speak on this too, if there are things that they could better talk about or explain. Like what I like about Tosh being able to go to her for this. I don't want to keep going to her for the authority figure type stuff when it comes to this, but she has had a lot of experience with the OGs, with Don's family, and also within her classes already been speaking about this stuff. It's now that I feel like she feels more comfortable that there is more of a slew of us who are willing to back this up on more than just a class level. And there were some questions that were dropped in, but I think we kind of covered them. I just wanted to make sure I acknowledge them because I put them
Yeah.
on my stories. And it was, is there a noticed difference of people who object in country or demographic or age? Um, and what are perceived differences between locking and Campbellocking by people who object? Um,
So I'll say that because I'm locked in with the Japanese community, there was a bit of pushback in the sense that, oh well, we can't automatically make or we can't instantly change the verbiage. Like it's going to be something that has to come over time. Which I understand. Like again, like it's easy for us to say locking in English, Campbell locking in English, because that is our native language. When you start when you start saying locking, and then it turns into Campbellocking, like it's very weird for people who don't speak that language. And Japanese people also abbreviate the shit out of
I was gonna
everything.
say that, yeah. So that it's
So
just maybe now it's. I mean, this is my outside take on it, but it's like, try
yeah,
to educate that you were abbreviating this whole time. You've been shorthanding it, and
yes,
the actual word was this,
yes.
right? So again, that's my outside take on it.
So yeah, I think there is going. I think especially with like the with most of the Eastern Asian countries, I should say, it'll be a little bit more difficult to just kind of roll off the tongue. Um, Not that it's an excuse,
Yeah,
but I
but
think
it's
that
understandable.
yeah, it's just I understand it when people don't when people think, oh, that's kind of a pain in the butt to say in our language.
Yeah, but
But there is, I will say that there is a group of people, one of who's here in the chat. What's up, Kitty? Um, who want to spread uh the process of changing over to using camp blocking, and there is a movement for it. There are people who are invested. There are people who understand. So, I think that is just one of those things that will take time.
and I don't know the perceived differences between locking and camel locking by people who object because I haven't really seen much of it.
Mhm.
And my take, even before I heard if there was anybody, it's changing it to Campbell locking doesn't change the way that you dance. I don't think that that will be true. I don't think it changes the way that you perceive the dance, the music, the things that you've been feeling by learning the vocabulary and the foundations, the best that you have so far. I don't think that changes anything. Your connection to the dance will still be as strong as your body, the body mechanics of it will be. You're not going to start blowing air kisses for no reason. Like it doesn't work like that. That is so funny to me. Like, every time I see it, I'm like, you didn't aim that. That's ooh weird. And that's just me. So maybe if I'm judging, you know what I'm looking for. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I would love to hear from other teachers that maybe have a perceived difference of it and we're teaching the a difference of understanding. But to me, what that really is doing is that you were looking at the lockers and you were teaching one person's style, right? Because if you're maybe doing like Scooby, it's it's gonna generally look different than the way that Dawn did things because they just had different nuances, different approaches. But again, the dance stemmed from the same source.
I would say that that kind of brings it back to what how I thought of things prior,
Mm.
which is basically it. When you think of Campbell locking is Dawn. The way he danced, the way his movements are, the way his mentality is, his freedom, and then locking was the summation of what everybody else did as well, with less of the personal character of Dawn baked in. Um, and again, that's something that I thought for years. Don't deny it,
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact that like the under at least the conversations that I had and the understanding that I had was more about okay at the and again this is at that time, um is that when it comes to Campbell walking, like Dawn is Dawn, and Dawn's dance stands alone, and so locking is kind of like everything else that came after, or the style of not just him but the community. And so there I think there's also different ways to kind of view that paradigm as well. But at the end of the day, it is the camp log. I think coming back to it, you like once you really understand that look, the name of the dance was the name of the dance before it got changed for legal reasons.
Mm-hmm. Legal and
And
drama and whatever.
and
Like something
a
happened. I mean, so, again, this I'm showing you my dumb way of how I try to appreciate the history. Something happened that made them change from Campbell locking to locking. We can go into those things. If you're curious about that, Kai Star's the man. This is why we're doing this podcast together because I will just gloss over that. Not to say that it's not important. I'm just not the best at wanting to understand it. I just know a change happened and we're at a point again where we want to make a change. And I actually had a question for us
Mhm.
because I was thinking like just questions I thought people would ask, but I guess it's more like things like I would wanted to ask and hopefully answer. And one of them is like, why do we think that we could be successful with this, knowing that the term locking has been so integrated internationally, and that now we're asking for this huge change? Like, why do we think? Why do we believe that? Not just like not just that we believe in the cause of it, but why do we believe this change can actually happen?
Yeah, why not? I guess.
You know, because some people will hear this and be like, "That sounds impossible."
Yeah, I well, and that's why, like, that's why, at least for me, I want to kind of I don't know. Uh, I don't know. I don't. There's a word for it that's out there, but I think I want to kind of balance it out in the sense that I know that there are people who aren't going to make the switch, who aren't going to change, who are set in their ways, and that's what it is. Um, so again, that's why for me it's like, look, irrespective of what those people think, if we can like enact a positive change on people to at least pay homage to Dawn in that way, then the work is done.
Yeah.
And it's not like, okay, the work is done and it ends. It means that we continue to do it and we stay consistent and we do our best to continue to pay that forward. Um and again, like I don't really think that there's going to be like a massive change. Not yet. Because I think people are stuck. I think people are comfortable. I think people are stubborn. I think people are prideful. I think people are egotistical. Is that going to does that mean that we should stop, or does that mean that we shouldn't think positive about being able to make that change? No. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
So so I guess that sums up my why not.
Yeah, that's great. Um, from like personal experience, just in the dance world, there's been things that have changed within it, right? Like the breakdancing thing that people pointed out. Like that's helpful. Like, cause that's a huge, like, it's kind of always been there, even though we had to like educate within the culture to be like, let's call it the right thing, right?
Hmm.
Same that someone brought up in the Discord, saying that there was a whole thing about calling it urban hip hop and urban all this other stuff, and somehow overnight it feels like that went away. And I was like, oh, cool. That's awesome. I know. I like when he brought that up. I was like, I forgot that was even a thing, but that was so real that it was pissing people off. Like, it was so heavy of like people being passionate about that, and a lot of people being like, no, there's a separation, there's a difference, and it's like maybe maybe it should be a difference, and it'd be helpful if you acknowledge that. And these changes have happened. I would say too, and this is, man, this is weird to point out, but like this is real for me. That like, I used to grow up thinking saying the N word was okay, and that's because of my environment. That's because of like where I grew up, and I was not as educated on the topic of why that was a terrible use, a terrible word to use just so nonchalantly, or just ever, right? And you see a lot of people even like during BLM of like, I can say it because I grew up here or I'm friends with these people. Like those are not objectively good enough ever, right? But I grew up in that, like pretty much all through high school, and again, it's because of the place I grew up, is because of my surroundings and my environment. That was a way to cut. I didn't even want to like defend it. I just used to do it, but then I learned better, and I was like, that is something that is going to be removed from my vocabulary, and it eventually was, and it is. So I know for myself, personal change of like habit and defending these things, it takes away my identity to like do you say I can't do it? Like, no, there is a reason that a huge movement was made to be like, we have to start respecting black community, right? So that was my personal thing, and I hope that others have done the same when it comes to that specific topic, but also when it comes to this, I do believe that we can make this change. And in comparing all of the other street styles, we have the fewest people in it. So I've always believed that if change can happen in ours, we can see change happen in others. And I was really big about that during like the BLM movement in 2020 of like, I can see it happening in locking because there's so few of us and that we can speak about this. We like know most of the heavy hitters. We know most of the organizers. We can make a difference and try to make it safer and better and respectful for black culture, because that's something that was a huge topic. Have we been appropriating black culture? Like by just being within this dance and not doing the homework, not doing the history, not paying respect, not trying to be an ally. So I've always believed that within our little community compared to the others, I think it's doable. I think it's possible and that we can do it. And if change like this needs to happen in the others, then we have been the example to set forward. So I've always been big about that. That's like one of my big whys, or the why not. You know, it's funny. I used to live with why not. Oh,
Oh
I'm gonna
man.
tell a funny story really quick.
Oh man.
Because when I lived with Why Not, he would like when he was home, it felt like Christmas every time because he was always traveling, right? And
Okay.
I was like always upset about that. And I remember like I was out with like RJ and some of the other breakers and stuff, and like we were like just out at a club, and then someone asked like, "Hey RJ, can we hang out at the house?" And RJ was like, "I don't see why not," and I was like, "I don't see why not either."
Oh.
Why not is the homie, dude. Dude, if I, actually, I'm just on the topic of him right now, but like if I would ever say I was impacted by hip hop the most, it was just by about being around that guy. Because my fat ass would just be on the couch, like wanting to watch the next episode of whatever it was. And he'd be like, "What are you up to?" I'm like, "I'm about to watch this episode." He's like, "Oh, okay, cool. I'll be right back. Be in the garage." Comes back 20 minutes when I finish my episode. He comes back with like a piece of James Brown that he drew, and I'm like, "Man, I am so not hip hop." But I don't know. These are the kind of stories I feel like are fun to share because those are real impacts on me of like that's real shit. Like he lived it. He is it. And so I wonder the
Right.
same thing
I
about
agree.
yeah, I know I'm fucking dumb. But like these things bring me to like when I say I never call myself a Campbellocker, I know now looking back my first couple years, I dressed, walked, looked, acted like a Campbellocker. Like so much so that my crews make fun of me the way I dressed because I was like I don't care. Like I'm gonna wear the stripes even at the mall, you know. Like that was just shitting on people. Like I heard about like Nicodemus would never not wear hush puppies even if he was playing basketball, and I was like, you know what? I'm like that too.
Holy shit. Even when Nikolai was in LA, he always had hush puppies on. That's the funniest thing. Holy shit.
Yeah. So I mean, I heard about
Yeah.
stuff like that very early on, and I was like, you know what? I will live it like that too. I'm just about that life because I don't know any better. But and I believed that Don was the same way. I'm just gonna go. I'm just gonna do. Has nothing to do with like rebelling against society or making a statement. He was just living his life, free, loving, caring, super charismatic. And I was like, I think there's a part of that that I really agree with, that I really identify with, and I live that way. So for me too, making this change from calling it Campbell locking to locking, it's more just me kind of trying to kill off a habit and not me not understanding that there was a difference. I knew that it was always the same thing. So again, the dance doesn't change. I look back at my younger self and I'm like, you know what? I think I did the thing the best that I could. Like Don wouldn't have known that. I'm not gonna tell him the first time I meet him, like dress like you all the time, bro. But I lived it. And I always felt like, you know, even when I met him, it was about meeting a hero. It was hoping that he was meeting someone that he identified with, you know. Thank
I
you for
don't think
letting
I
me go
had
on a random.
I don't think I don't see I think that's really kind of cool because I don't think I had the same sort of courage to be like, fuck it, I'm just gonna be me, you know? And I wonder if I had met Don earlier, if that, or if I had interacted more with Don earlier, because I met him like in 2006. But I didn't really interact with him. I never got close. And so I think like for me, it's like, you know, how would that sort of self-empowerment message would have,
Mm.
how would have that changed who I am over the years? And like I think the path that I'm on, or the path that I came down, um it led me to a lot of it led me to a place where I think I how would I say it? I'm not ashamed of where I came from, and I'm not ashamed of the fact that like of the mindsets that I've had. Uh, I am ashamed of the fact that at one point like I let that ego get the best of me.
Mm.
But I think in terms of the things that I've learned over the years, and the the kind of role that I've grown into now, like I see the value in being able to balance the that side of things as well.
Yeah. Like
So,
even as I'm talking about how I used to be when it comes to that, I don't know if it's something I grew out of or grew up.
mhm.
I actually don't know because there's a part of me that still wants to just be that way, like
But I
hugely.
think, but isn't that like being you? You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like is it like and I think that that's kind of the cool thing about um Don's message is that you're free to be you,
Yeah.
you know?
And so when I heard about Don, like it was even before I met him, like and also just watching the videos of them performing, there was just something that clicked with me of like I get it. I get it. Like be different, be weird because that's you. You know, like it doesn't mean that you are like the person next to you. But I will say the reason I'm confused about myself when it comes to that is because I work corporate. I worked in tech, right? Like there's a part of me that kind of has to be normal when I
Like
was in
conform.
that. Conform, right? I'm conforming to that, and that's not what Don's message was about. So I even feel like within my dance career, because it was in tandem with my other career, who am I, right? Am I this free being of like the way that I dress and present myself, and that carries into the way that I dance, or am I this intellectual that is always looking for how to break things? And I bring that to that's like those were real like issues for me, like
Mhm.
the 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 tech career and then the dance career, like not knowing how to mishmash. And I've talked about it, like me having like identity issues when it comes to like dance. And but the reason I speak on this is because there's a part that was not affected by Don, and then there's a part that truly was, and I felt more like myself being a Campbellocker.
Mhm.
Like looking back, I wish I had more pride in just being able to say that. I just didn't think that I could. I really didn't. I didn't think I could say I am a Campbellocker. Even after I learned from Tosh, like it wasn't something that I was just like, you know what? Yes. I'm not sure why. It's something that I'm starting to like question and wonder because I'm wondering if anyone else has this kind of like thought process too of like why did I always just call it locking? Was it just
Well,
because that's what was presented?
I think in that respect I kind of, and to an extent I still feel kind of the same way because I know I'm in my head a lot, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I like for me, I don't think I'm as I think I'm much more reserved in this, and maybe that's because like as I kept working in Japanese environments and going to Japan a lot, and like hive mind mentality, um like just being ultra considerate and not wanting to rock the boat, and conforming. Um and even then like the methods, the dancers that more appealed to me, like I saw Don's power and I wanted to take it, but a lot of the technical stuff is all that stuff that was really influential on me. And so that's why I think for myself I never really kind of quote unquote felt comfortable with the idea of calling myself a Campbell locker, because I didn't like I just I didn't feel confident enough to be like Don.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think I don't think I ever felt like shit, I can be like that. And maybe that's a fear thing. Maybe that's something that I should have gotten out of and not really let affect me as much. But I think, is it the East Asian in me? Is it in my personality? Is it on any of these things? But I think I just didn't. For me, I didn't want to trample over the high flying creativity of Dawn in calling myself a Campbellocker, because
Mm,
I know that I'm much more rigid and tech with people who are still hesitant to say that locking and Campbellocking are one and the same thing, is because there's that vision, there is that um there's that mental element or that mental image of thinking like, hey, this is this thing because of who it embodies.
yeah. I will say, like, you mentioned the fear, and we're asking, like, a lot of the whys. And I think this is a good place to, like, for everyone to ask themselves, too. Are there parts of it that you had that fear of calling yourself a Campbell locker? Like, do you identify with anything that Kaistar and I are putting out right now? Because I think these are real things. Like Kaisar mentioned, we both have very different backgrounds when it comes to being introduced and growing up in this dance. And how did that affect you? How did it affect others? How did it affect the community around you? And it's especially as like non black dancers, I think it's really important for us to like question and wonder, because I think that's you said the word fear. I was like, I think that's what I was trying to get at, but without saying it, there's a fear of like being able to say, like, I'm a Campbell locker,
Yeah,
you
like
know?
like how do you own up to that, right?
Yeah.
How do you call yourself that? And I mean, like, and especially like when you watch, and I hate to always drag them into into that role, but it's like, how do you watch people like Alan and Omar, right, who are so creative and so freewheeling, right, and be like, shit, I'm like that. you know like you see those elements of the Campbellock in them, and
Hmm.
it's like, and at least for me it's like, I ain't like that, I ain't built like that, you know
Mm.
and admitting to yourself that, hey, like fuck, I wish I could do that,
Yeah.
but that's not me. and,
Yeah.
and and again, like, I don't mean to horseshoe them into that position, right? And it's the same thing like when I watch, well, I mean, like, it's the same thing when I watch like the Hoodlockers, right? Epic, Glitch, Hussein, like they have an element that I don't. And maybe I have things that they don't. I think there's trade-offs, because again, we're different people. We focus on different things, and we all think differently.
Yeah,
But
dude, even when I watch like Ricky or Glitch, I'm just like, dude, we're like the same height and I can't do half the shit that you do. Like, what Glitch does sometimes fucking astounds me because I'm always looking at people like my height, right? Because I feel like we have similar issues. And it's like, man, it looks like he's not impacted by a lot of the same things that I feel like I go through. It's wonderful. I always love watching Glitch get down.
yeah, and it's just like being able to think about like those people who are like, or like, I don't know, just mentally free. Like, I watch Lockdown and I'm like, holy fuck, how do you do that?
I do.
Like, how are you?
I still think about it. Like, how do you do that? One, around all of these people too.
Yeah,
Like,
and so I think, but I think I think, and so I think, like, getting kind of back to the correlation. I apologize for interrupting, but it's like the whole process of returning the name Campbellock to the usage, to making it like our everyday parlance, is to acknowledge the fact that, hey, we're us. The message of self-empowerment, the idea of Campbell locking, taking the lock, being yourself,
yeah,
and paying that one forward, and then paying that back to Don for giving this to us. I think it's just more important that we do make that switch, so that people can realize that there's a reason behind it. It's not just called locking for the sake of, calling it the dance, the name that we've been using, but there is like actual feelings and emotions, and a thought process that comes behind it,
Yeah.
and being able to communicate those things, like us being able to talk about like our desires and our fears and you know the things that we focus on, the way that we approach things, like these are fundamental personality and mental kind of constructs that we have, and you know that we've grown into, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like we can be us in locking, in Campbell locking, and
And
see and so
I was gonna say like I I always do this when Hurricane says it too. Like you can be yourself, and I always like to help say because it doesn't that doesn't ring true for everybody just yet. And I like to say within locking, I think you can find yourself so you can be yourself. Right. That's why I talked about like my hive mind mentality of going to work and then also being a Campbell locker or in my head at the time a locker. Because I was also gonna say like looking back to like the way that I was taught, one of the critical things I learned from Rashad, and this is gonna be really funny. Like I asked him, "How do you walk?" Like I didn't I didn't understand because I'm learning like the Leo walk and like the Scooby walk. I'm like, is that how you move everywhere? Because some it doesn't, you know what I mean? It doesn't feel like I think I already inherently understood like with the Leo walk, you do that with people next to you because you do it by yourself. I don't know why you're showing me your hips like that, but whatever. It's cool. So I asked him just like, I feel kind of awkward like walking around or like it was actually more for also popping. And he was like, dude, just walk to the spot you want to go to, state who you are and what you represent, then do your thing. And in my head, I because people are sharing that short snippet of Don recently when he was on stage and being like, no, I'm Don Campbell and I'm Campbell locking. In my head, I was like, I'm Lil B, I'm locking, like because again, I don't think that back then I would have been able to have the courage to be able to, I'm a Campbell locker, even though I didn't know that there was like a huge, or it was all the same thing. And knowing now that I could have been saying Campbell locking with like even more courage, it took that much more courage to get there, and I couldn't. I just couldn't. So I was okay being like, I know I'm starting, and I'm rising up to being like, I'm calling myself a locker. Maybe subconsciously, it's like if I ever get there, I will say it, I will think it. But I felt like there were levels to it, and not that they were different, but there were levels to like my embracing saying that I am a Campbell locker, that I do Campbell locking.
I'm not gonna lie, like I still feel like that, you know? And I am doing my best to make that change. But I can't also but I at the same time like I can't also deny that I feel the same, right? Like I can't sit here and say I still don't like I still feel like there's levels internally, even though I know there shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
Like like the seed has been planted here, but there's still a level like in here, like in my gut, where it's like,
Yeah, because I
you
see,
know,
2,000 people have liked this post, so that's at least 2,000 something people that are already gonna be about it. And this is my way of also talking to the people that are like maybe are having trouble with it, not just on like the out of habit and it was shorthand so I can change it, but like why didn't we do this before, right? Like what was it about like saying Campbell locking that maybe there was a lot of power to it. And I think that there is. Maybe we put too much to it, but I understand that everyone comes from a different place of being like, am I that different? Am I that myself?
mhm.
And I think it's going to be different depending on where you come from, your upbringing, like your understanding of the history and your own history. I think that's a beautiful thing to try to intersect too. How does your life and your history that you've lived up to now resonate with our source material, which is Don Campbell? So
And I think I I just also think that it's important again, like to not pressure people into this, because I think that again, like not saying that everyone feels the same way, but I can tell you the fear of wanting to say like, hey, like I'm this is real.
yeah,
Like like and maybe people feel differently about it, but like it's there are, no matter what you say, like those, no, or no matter what is said, I think the way that people process things internally, and being able to acknowledge that there may be fear, or there may be some sort of wall holding people back from being able to say like, hey, this is what I am,
Yeah.
you know,
And
and
I would like
and
to say
making those
too,
changes.
I like to say too, when it comes to that, like I said, everyone has a different role in what you do inside of this dance right now, right? Like an organizer, teacher, student, and everything. And I would like to say to like the people that are like the teachers and organizers, if you have the fear of doing it for whatever reason, know that you're not alone. Know that there's like Unorthodox has your back. Like, let's talk locking. We have your back. Like, we are also in this with you, trying to make this change. You are not the lone wolf trying to do it. You may be in your community, and we can just start there, but just know globally, you're not the only one doing it. And that's something that I know is a part of my role with this crew, to let you guys know, like, this is not just something you just hop on board with, because I know it means something to people to be able to make this change. And if it does mean to the depths of like the power, the fear, and things like that, you're not alone, and we're here to talk about it. Maybe I should just look into therapy. Whatever.
These conversations end up being a little bit of therapy anyways, right? Um, David was asking earlier, to kind of going into the lore about how locking and the name the lockers got into the forefront. So I'll just kind of do a speed run really quick. Um, the Campbellock Dancers was the name of Don's original group. Um, Naturally because it's the Campbellock. Uh, they when he did when he produced a record with Sonny Craver on Stanson Records, Sonny Craver's record label. Um, Don had to sign contracts, and I believe the royalty contracts. Dennis went over it in Alan's post, so I don't recall the specifics of it, but essentially, Don had to sign over so many royalties. And when he began to use the name the Campbellock Dancers on TV, they essentially got paperwork, cease and desist, telling them that they couldn't use the name the Campbellock because of the copyright claim on the name, the Campbellock. So they made the decision, uneasy decision, to make the name the Lockers, shorten the name, and that's where we got to where we are today. Um, but again, the original name, Campbellock Dancers.
Yeah, and I will say this is not something that was like actually foreign to me as a concept, because as an example, like the Jabberwockies, when they did the first season of America's Best Dance Crew, they signed everyone who signed up for that show as a crew were signing over the names to that production company. I forget who it was. And so when they wanted to go make the Jabberwocky show and everything, they owned the rights to that name. So the original Jabberwockies, a lot of them were not included anymore because it was no longer like their name, so they couldn't function as that. So they kind of went and did their own thing. So that was like my way of like, hearing more about the Campbellock song and the Campbellock history. I was like, oh man, Hollywood crazy. Hollywood do things that hurt people, and it does, because they're trying to make the money. But
Show business.
it's show business, and I don't know if. Oh shit, that's right, right.
Oh, wait, you were? I didn't know that.
It was season. Yeah, I remember that Don covers this in the camp, and then
Yeah.
I
And
and
Don's covered it over the years. Like
yeah,
he's talked about it multiple times. But, I agree. It is important to have it on one of these episodes. But again, like there are people who know more about it. I know more about the record label side of stuff just because,
yeah. I
but
I know about trash.
I have, for what it's worth, humble brag. I've got both pressings of the Stanson, do the Campbellock. I
Fresh
had
Select. That is right. Oh
That's
my
right. Holy
god.
shit. That's crazy. I totally forgot about that. Holy fuck. Okay, cool. Tight.
Wow, that's a throwback for me, dude.
That is,
Cause
oh man, that's a throwback for everybody. Holy
yeah,
shit.
cause especially when AOV was super active, like we were tight knit with Fresh.
Ugh.
That's sick. But again, on the show business side of things, I think that this is something that kind of comes second nature to us growing up in America. I don't know if that's necessarily true overseas. So that's why I think it's important to really repeat this story and be able to speak on it. I will get better. I will get better. But it's important because I don't know if people know that this is something that can happen and why there's a lot of like heartache, not just drama, but it's painful to have to change your crew name because of show business. These things happen. It's for us second nature to be like, ah, damn, you got screwed by the man. Like it happens.
I think it's just painful in general to have to deal with any of showbiz, you know? Like, what is it? I was watching uh so one of our friends who is actually part of Fanny Pack, Sohei,
Mm.
um America's Best Dance Crew, um is now the choreographer for the new, I don't know, K-pop-ish group Cat's Eye. And so my wife and I were watching the Netflix special on Cat's Eye, and you could see there's a lot of manufactured drama just for the sake of show business.
Mm.
And so when you think about we've come this far, Hollywood's not going to change its spots. And so you can imagine what it was like for Dawn and everybody else back then and how it pits people against each other. And I think that that's also, like speaking on what, Wright mentioned earlier is that you want to know what? Like, there's a lot of like unresolved issues and shit that came about just because of all this stuff that's happening. Like, people making things about money, people making things about pride, about ego. Um, like the whole works. And so I think being able to acknowledge that and kind of pay it back to what Don wanted to do is just dance and be him and represent him. Um, and using that as a using his message of self-empowerment for all of us, being proud of who we are and what we do.
Yeah. And dude, speaking of which, just as you were saying, like, Don just wanted to dance. And I like to believe that all the homies around him wanted to make that, possible. But again, show business and money, like that those things do cause a rift. They cause issues.
Mhm.
But just how you said, like Don's the type of person that just wanted to do his thing. I feel lucky enough to be next to Alan, who is, for better or worse, the same type of guy. And I say that with all the love in the world. It is also exhausting to be next to. Love of the death. But it's also like, man, how can you go? Sometimes I look at him and what he does and what he accomplishes and the way he impacts people. It's like, how do you just keep going?
Yeah.
So I can imagine that some people saw Don too, because I know that Don was a lot of people's heroes of like looking at him
Mhm.
and be like, how do you do this? And I
Yeah.
can also see things of like something so dear to you, like the name itself, being distorted and crushed and having to change. Like those leave impact on a person and your relationships. So I also feel lucky enough that like I know for like me, Alan, and Omar, it's nothing like that can get in the way because I don't have a stake in it in the same regard of like the name means that much to us, like homies for life kind of thing. Not to say that they didn't have that, but again, we'd like to think that we've learned from our elders. We've learned from the trauma that we took on, and we also the trauma that we heard about, whether it was acknowledged as trauma or not. These are the kind of lessons that we take away from it to enhance like our livelihood, our brotherhood. And I hope that these are the lessons that people really take on for yourselves. Like this is this is the history lesson and life lessons that you learn as you dig deeper into why we call it Campbellocking. And again, how does your history resonate with that? You know, I do see that we're like at 7:30 ish. We'll
Yeah.
probably wrap up soon. It's been about 2 hours with some technical hiccups.
Yay.
Uh,
Um, to kind of, I'm gonna jump back really quick just because I have stuff on hand.
yeah.
These are the two pressings of the Campbellock. I had Don sign them at camp when we were there. But I believe based off of the labels, this one should have been first. This one should have been second because we
Mm,
also had because Stanson was using this label in the 80s as well. But hard for me to say which pressing came out first. But there are two different pressings of the Campbellock. Um, Sonny Craver, for what it's worth, is also African American out of Columbus, Ohio. And he had Stanson Records, produced a bunch of records, had a bunch of stuff out there. So for anyone who's looking to kind of do that side of the history and do a little bit of digging, you can still find the records out there. And like, hey, like, what could be cooler in doing our dance than at least having the record by Dawn?
yeah.
I don't know. That's sorry.
I
Got
actually
it.
love
Came
that
up.
song. I think I had heard recently that there were some people that were like, ah, it's all right. Wait, I don't know, man. It's kind of a banger to me. Because it's him himself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I. T- I'm a car now. Tight.
I don't get mad at Kias on the road though. It's the goddamn Teslas. Teslas in pill
Uh,
form though. What's up?
ugh. I was gonna say something. I totally got distracted because of that.
Sorry.
Oh man.
Okay, so Hood Lockers like Riot Epic saying like I'd like to contact you as ASAP because I'd like to nail down a date for us for you to join us. That would be great to have you guys on.
Yeah.
Be great. I would like just in general. I'd love to know how you guys are doing. What's up with your guys' communities? It's been a minute, and yeah, it took a lot of years off ever since the like really the last time I talked to like the whole crew. I got to see. I'm glad they got to see Riot, man. Like it was dope when we got to hang out here in the Bay. Like man,
You're good, right? It's all love. Nah, man, I'm excited for that. Cause and you know for what it's worth, like for the Hoodlockers to be representing as long as they have, you
yeah,
know, um, you guys definitely have a strong voice in our community. Uh, if not deserving of a stronger voice. Like
yeah,
how many groups can say that they represented the lockers on on the actual like TV show, on the actual documentary,
yeah.
right?
Dude, I still
Like,
get pissed off thinking that like when we had Riot out here for Whack Crackle Lock 3, that you
mm,
said that it was like your first like judging thing. I know like shortly afterwards you did SDF and everything, but I was like, that is so disrespectful to you that this is the first time. Like, I'm honored as fuck to have you, but it's like this should have been like your 50th, like on the real, dude. Man, um, and just to like to shout it out, Get Lifted Bay Area, still we're still on, we're still on for it. December 20th weekend. Super excited. I'm just like writing away at everything that needs to be done from the organizer point of view. And as a snippet of a teaser, there's a I won't say small, there's a medium chance that we'll be doing this somewhere in Asia in June. We'll be doing Get Lifted somewhere overseas. We'll keep you guys informed, but it's looking good. I personally enjoyed watching how Riot reacted being in Splash Zone for World Crack Whack Crackle Lock Finals. It's not many events you get to say I got to see someone get hit in the dick.
You got to ask somebody about it, huh?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think I throw dope events with very memorable things. Oh, appreciate you, man.
Oh
Any
man.
anytime you guys want to come through, I still down to like do like a camp out or something because I think it'd be dope just to have everyone together and let's just kick back and stuff. And I'd like to share with you too, Kai. I was just on the phone with Omar and he's feeling pretty good about coming back. And it makes me feel like the work and things I've been thinking about and doing this past year is not for nothing because I want to make sure that he comes into a place where he feels like it's a home. You know, that's first and foremost going to be like my priority because again, it's not the again with no pressure on him. The world needs him. The world just needs to see Firelock do his thing because I think it is that inspiring and that impactful. The same thing with the Hoodlockers, man. Every time I see y'all get down, like it's just it makes me wish and know that I can do better in repping. I don't know. It's something. It's why I always like to say, like, I think crews are really important because when you see true brotherhood, that's what makes you feel like I want to be part of something. Whether I can be a part of that or not, it's like I want to be a part of something. Like, and that is like the strongest message I think crews can represent without saying it. So very excited to have you guys on. All the love, man. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you guys for the questions.
Yeah,
Thank
the
you for
the
joining us, like on Twitch and YouTube. Should say this now. Our VODs are now on YouTube and Twitch. So it'd be much
Yay.
easier for people to watch it back. I know now that it was a pain in the ass for people to watch back the VODs on Instagram. I didn't know that. But, you know, lessons learned. That's why we're moving over to this. Eventually, we I would like to help get our audio files from this pulled and put on as actual podcasts on podcast networks, like even like Spotify. If Seach can do it, I'm just saying.
You said it, not me.
It's okay. He's my sensei. But yeah, it's a good time to cut it.
Yep. Um, it has been roughly 2 hours with a couple hiccups here and there. Uh, Everyone who tuned in, thank you for coming on the ride with us. Been a lot of fun. Um, Campbellock, Campbellocking.
Campbellocking.
Let's keep taking it forward, keeping it positive. And if there's pushback, then there's going to be pushback. You know, understanding that that is just it's growing pains, but it comes from a good place. Let's keep it coming from a good place. As you know, as Alan and Tosh are wanted to keep everyone in mind with. Um, you know, like we're all trying to push for not for anybody's agenda, but the sole thing is just to pay it back to Tom. And
Yeah.
even if you don't agree with it, you know, talk to us. Talk to
Yeah.
somebody. You know,
Yeah.
you don't
Have your
have to
questions
keep it.
ready. Bring people to the podcast. It really helps to have a centralized place for us to talk about this. And you can always refer to us. We'll try to make sure we stay good and stay professional. But
Except for talking about David getting hit in the dick.
Hurt Dick Locker out. But yeah, thank you
Uh,
all for joining us. This has been a great episode. This topic is not yet done. Again, we'll bring on the Hood Lockers. We'd like to continue talking about that, their involvement and feelings about the change, how it affects them, and also just to catch up with them. And then again, we're also going to have Tosh and Hurricane as guests sometime next week, waiting on confirmation from them what day is good. But we'll let you guys know. If you guys can, hate doing this, but if you can like, subscribe, share, please help get people to the Twitch and YouTube, because the better that we can move away from Instagram Live, I think will help us and everyone else a lot. So thank you for your guys' support. Thanks for your patience with us. This is really fun to do. I won't lie. Like, this is. I actually feel less exhausted now being able to talk about it publicly, because I think I was probably just like harboring so much of like, yeah, this is great. So great
yeah,
therapy for me.
yeah, I think just being able to talk about stuff in general will always be helpful for everybody. And then you feel like the weight is lifted after like stewing in your own thoughts. So, Riot, uh, we're gonna have Epic, or we want to have all the guys. Like, got to figure out the
Let's
logistics of that.
let's get the
But
logistics down. How many we can get? I can fit as many, but if we were gonna keep on the IG live, well, we'll figure out logistics. That's part of our job now.
phrasing, phrasing.
We're so professional. Yeah, don't
Uh,
forget to hit the notification button. Future episodes on youtube.com/ Let's Talk Locking.
oh man. Okay. I
All right,
gotta
y'all.
stop being 13-year-old. Peace
We're
out,
gonna
y'all.
we're gonna cut the stream. Thank you all for joining. See you next time.
Thanks.